All right, thank you so much for joining me for Dreamio AI-powered adventures. Thanks to the game dev for giving me a key to let me play. And something I should mention is that something I don't talk about a lot because I know people have mixed feelings about it, but my day-to-day real life jobs revolve quite heavily around AI, which is hilarious because I have really strong feelings about how AI should be monitored and treated. And yeah, anyway, anyway, so let's just roll into this. Let's see what we got going on. Let's start a new adventure. So we can do medieval, we could do cyberpunk, we can do alien planet, zombie apocalypse, a nuclear holocaust, alien invasion, search for anomalies. Number of people have been reported missing. Your team has arrived, but appears completely uninhabited. Let's do that. That sounds like fun. Okay, welcome to Dreamio AI-powered adventures. Here are a few tips to get you started. You can type and say your actions, dialogue, events, ask the narrator questions, and interact with them in any way you want. By default, the narrator will trigger a game over if you die and may reject some actions. You can click the rule set button at the top to adjust the narrator's behavior. You can use the What are my choices button if you're unsure of what or how to proceed. Narrator, you are a Foundation personnel team that specializes in investigating anomalous occurrences. Your team was given the coordinates of a remote settlement in Siberian taiga. Is that how you say that? Where a number of people have been reported missing recently. Your team has arrived at the settlement, but appears completely uninhabited. What will you do next? Choices? Search the... Set up base camp and conduct surveillance. Let's see. Use to try to contact. Begin a thorough search. Set up a base camp. Seems like a good idea, right? No. Search the settlement for any clues.
You begin to search the settlement, checking each building for any signs of life or clues. As you move through the empty streets, you notice that some of the buildings have been ransacked and there are signs of struggle. You also find a few personal belongings scattered around, including clothing and small trinkets. What will you do next?
Base camp?
You find a suitable building to set up your base camp in and begin to gather supplies. As you settle in, you hear strange noises coming from outside. What will you do next?
Okay, the doors and continue to... I guess.
You quickly barricade the doors and windows, then take up positions to watch for any signs of movement outside. The strange noises continue, but you can't see anything through the thick snowfall. Suddenly, one of your team members screams in terror as something bursts through the barricade and attacks them. What will you do next?
Defend the team and shoot the attacking thing? I don't know.
You quickly draw your weapon and fire at the attacking creature, managing to hit it and drive it back. However, more creatures begin to emerge from the darkness, surrounding your team. You fight valiantly, but eventually you are overwhelmed and your team is killed. Game over.
Looks like the narrator's decided to end the game. You can load the game. Okay, well, let's move on to the menu and we'll check something else. Start a new adventure. Let's start from the top. You awaken in a shadowy alley in a bustling medieval town. Around you, the clamor of town life echoes, the chorus of market criers, and the clatter of horse hooves on cobblestone. You have no memory of how you got here. What will you do next? Find a closest tavern and have a drink.
You wander through the winding streets until you come across a cozy-looking tavern. Inside, the air is thick with smoke and the sound of raucous laughter. You order a drink and take a seat at a table in the corner. As you sip your ale, you notice a group of rough-looking men eyeing you suspiciously from across the room. What will you do next?
Mind my own damn business.
You continue to drink your ale and ignore the group of men. However, as you finish your drink and make to leave, they block your path. One of them steps forward and demands that you hand over all your valuables. What will you do next?
Laugh and say when you find my valuables, let me know.
The men don't take kindly to your response and one of them draws a knife. They advance on you ready to attack. What will you do next?
Laugh in their face and counterattack.
You lunge forward and manage to disarm one of the men, but the others quickly overpower you. You are badly beaten and left for dead in the alleyway outside the tavern. Game over.
Yeah, we knew that was gonna happen. So I wonder if I've run out of tokens. Let's see what it says. The cloud AA services which powers this game come with an ongoing operating cost. Your purchase of the game covers the cost up to the amount that you paid for the game. Beyond that, to manage these costs, I've introduced an in-game currency called tokens. This approach was chosen to make the cost of operating the game transparent to players. Without the compromise of having tokens to offset the costs, the game would have to be priced higher than AAA titles to be commercially valuable over the long term. If you run out of tokens, you will automatically receive 10,000 tokens for free each day. If you wish to bypass the token system entirely, you can do so by providing your own API keys or by substituting cloud models with local ones at the expense of speed or quality. So funny enough, I do belong to a couple of different AI imaging services. If you guys didn't know it, I do have a secondary YouTube account that is very tiny that I'm doing shorts on. This is not a promotion. Please don't like run over there and click it. You would be very disappointed because it's completely different from what I currently do. But anyway, I was very familiar with this. I knew what I was getting into when I signed up for this. So I'm fine with tokens for now. I may flip to my own API keys later, but let's see, play. Let's see, start new adventure. Let's try the cyberpunk. You awaken in a dirty alley in a sprawling cyberpunk city. Above you, you can hear the hustle and the bustle of the city, a thrum of neon lights and thundering sirens. Periodically, you have no memory of how you got here. What are my choices? Look for clues or items that might help remember how I got here. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
You search the alley and find a discarded ID card with your name on it. It also has an address for a nearby apartment complex. What will you do next?
Let's see, for a discard with your name on it. How do I know it's my name? If I don't know who I am, how do I know that it's... Those are some big ass rats. Proceed to the nearby apartment complex to investigate.
You make your way to the apartment complex and find your way to the unit listed on the ID card. Inside, you find a note addressed to you that reads, "Meet me at the abandoned factory on 5th and Main at midnight." What will you do next?
We're gonna be stupid and go to the abandoned factory on 5th and Main at midnight. Go to abandoned factory on 5th and Main at midnight after we get some food.
You spend the day exploring the city and find a small food stand that serves up some questionable-looking street food. After eating, you make your way to the abandoned factory at midnight. As you approach, you notice that the entrance is barricaded with old crates and barrels. What will you do next?
Circle around the building looking for clues or other clues and another entrance.
You circle around the building and find a small side entrance that seems to have been overlooked. As you enter, you hear footsteps approaching from behind. What will you do next?
Duck into the nearest hidey, nearest room to hide, but watch who is coming.
You quickly duck into the nearest room and peek through a crack in the door. You see two figures approaching. One is a heavily armed guard, while the other is a well-dressed man with slicked back hair. They seem to be discussing something important, but you can't quite make out what they're saying. What will you do next?
Sneakily continue to eavesdrop, being careful not to make any noise or be seen.
You continue to listen in on the conversation, but as you shift your weight slightly, a loose floorboard creaks loudly. The guard immediately turns towards the door and spots you. He raises his weapon and shouts for you to surrender. What will you do next?
Surrender? Seems like a good idea.
The guard approaches you and roughly grabs your arm, leading you towards the well-dressed man. He introduces himself as a powerful figure in the city's criminal underworld and offers you a job to steal a valuable piece of technology from a rival gang. What will you do next?
We will agree to take the job.
The well-dressed man hands you a small device that will help you bypass the security systems of the rival gang's headquarters. He warns you that failure is not an option and that if you're caught, he'll deny any involvement. What will you do next?
The rival gang's headquarters to do some I don't know how to spell surveillance. Surveillance?
You make your way to the rival gang's headquarters and begin to scope out the area. You notice several heavily armed guards patrolling the perimeter, as well as a series of security cameras. What will you do next?
Time. Continue to scope out the area, making sure to make notes of the guards patrolling and look for blind spots in the camera coverage.
You spend several hours observing the area, taking note of the guards' patrol routes and identifying a few blind spots in the camera coverage. You also notice that there is a small gap in the fence near the back of the building. What will you do next?
Sneakily approach small gap in the fence while maintaining blind spots of the cameras.
You carefully make your way towards the gap in the fence, staying low and avoiding the cameras. As you get closer, you notice that there is a guard station nearby. What will you do next?
Watch the guard station to see what activity is there.
You watch the guard station for a few minutes and notice that the guard seems to be distracted, scrolling through their phone. You take advantage of this and quickly slip through the gap in the fence unnoticed. You are now inside the rival gang's headquarters. What will you do next?
Keeping low and be sneaky. Watch for any activity happening in the headquarters.
You move stealthily through the dimly lit interior of the headquarters, keeping an eye out for any signs of activity. You notice a few guards patrolling the area and rows of computer servers lining the walls. As you make your way deeper into the building, you hear voices coming from a nearby room. What will you do next?
Avoid that room and continue to our goal
You carefully make your way past the room with the two figures, avoiding detection. You eventually come across a locked door that appears to lead to the area where the valuable technology is stored. What will you do next?
Sneakily pick the lock.
You take out the device given to you by the well-dressed man and use it to pick the lock on the door. It takes a few minutes, but eventually, you hear a satisfying click as the lock disengages. You push open the door and step inside. The room is filled with rows of high-tech equipment and computer servers, all humming softly. In the center of the room is a large metal case that appears to be locked. What will you do next?
We were supposed to get that case, right? Scope out the case to make sure it's not a booby trap.
You approach the metal case and examine it closely. It appears to be a standard lock, but you notice a small wire running from the case to the wall. You follow the wire and see that it's connected to a small device on the wall with a red light blinking rapidly. It looks like some kind of alarm system. What will you do next?
Let's see if we can disarm the red light.
You examine the device on the wall and notice a small button labeled disarm. You press it and the red light stops blinking. It looks like you've successfully disarmed the alarm system. What will you do next?
Back to the suitcase and make sure again that it is safe to take.
You approach the metal case again and examine it closely. It appears to be a standard lock, but you don't see any other traps or alarms. You take out the device given to you by the well-dressed man and use it to pick the lock on the case. After a few tense moments, you hear another satisfying click as the lock disengages. You slowly open the case and find what looks like a small computer chip inside. What will you do next?
Make sure the inside of the case is safe and free from traps. I think we'll stop there, right?
You carefully examine the inside of the case and find no traps or alarms. It looks like you've successfully retrieved the valuable technology. What will you do next?
Retrieve the valuable technology. Carefully backtrack through the headquarters.
You carefully pick up the small computer chip and place it in your pocket. You backtrack through the headquarters, avoiding any guards or cameras you encounter. After a tense few minutes, you make it back to the gap in the fence and slip out unnoticed. You breathe a sigh of relief as you make your way back to the abandoned factory where you first met the well-dressed man. What will you do next?
Let's see. Carefully approach the factory to make sure there is no surprises.
You approach the factory cautiously, scanning the area for any signs of danger. As you get closer, you notice that the door is slightly ajar. You can hear faint voices coming from inside. What will you do next?
I carefully approach to verify that it is the client.
You approach the door slowly, trying to make out the voices inside. As you get closer, you recognize the voice of the well-dressed man who hired you for the job. You can also hear another voice, deeper and more menacing. What will you do next?
Carefully eavesdrop for any information.
You press your ear against the door, trying to make out what the two men are saying. You hear the well-dressed man thanking the other for his help in retrieving the technology. The deeper voice responds with a gruff laugh and says something about how he always gets what he wants. Suddenly, you hear footsteps approaching the door. What will you do next?
Duck around a corner to hide.
You quickly duck behind a nearby crate, hoping to avoid being seen. The footsteps approach the door and it swings open, revealing the well-dressed man and the rugged figure. They both look around the room, but don't seem to notice you hiding. The well-dressed man hands over the small computer chip to the other figure, who examines it closely before nodding in approval. What will you do next?
Continue. Oop. Continue hiding and observing 2 men.
You continue to watch from your hiding spot as the 2 men discuss their business. The well-dressed man seems nervous, fidgeting with his tie and avoiding eye contact with the rugged figure. The rugged figure, on the other hand, exudes confidence and power. After a few more minutes of conversation, they shake hands and the rugged figure leaves the factory. The well-dressed man lets out a sigh of relief and turns to leave as well. What will you do next?
Gosh. And in leaving the hiding spot, you let the well-dressed man know you are there.
You cautiously step out of your hiding spot and make yourself known to the well-dressed man. He jumps in surprise but quickly composes himself, asking you how long you've been there and what you heard. What will you tell him?
You tell him you just got there and didn't hear anything of importance.
The well-dressed man seems to relax a bit at your response, but still eyes you warily. He thanks you for your discretion and hands you a small envelope filled with credits as payment for the job. He then quickly leaves the factory, not looking back. What will you do next?
Time to return to the apartment. Verifying we are not being followed.
You cautiously make your way out of the abandoned factory, keeping an eye out for any signs of being followed. You don't notice anyone tailing you and eventually make it back to your apartment without incident. As you enter your apartment, you notice that someone has been there while you were gone. Things are slightly out of place and a few items have been moved. What will you do next?
I carefully look around for any traps and look for any clues of who been there.
You carefully scan the room for any signs of traps or danger, but don't find anything out of the ordinary. As you search for clues about who might have been in your apartment, you notice a small piece of paper on the table with a message scrawled on it. We know what you did. You're in deep trouble. The message is unsigned, and there are no other clues as to who might have left it. What will you do next?
Destroy the note. Making sure to lock the door behind you and go to bed. I don't know.
You crumple up the note and toss it in the trash, making sure to lock your door before heading to bed. As you lay down, you can't shake the feeling of unease that has settled over you. Suddenly, you hear a loud banging on your door. What will you do next?
Carefully and quietly get out of bed and approach the door, not letting them know you are there. Oop, I misspelled
You
that.
slowly and quietly make your way to the door, trying not to make any noise. As you approach, the banging becomes louder and more insistent. You can hear muffled voices on the other side of the door, but can't make out what they're saying. What will you do next?
Look out the people to see if them.
You cautiously approach the door and peer through the peephole. You see 2 figures standing outside, both wearing dark clothing and masks that cover their faces. They seem to be carrying weapons of some kind. Suddenly, one of them notices you looking through the peephole and starts pounding on the door even harder. What will you do next?
Ask them what? Look for any way out of the room.
You quickly scan the room for any possible escape routes, but there doesn't seem to be any other way out besides the door. The pounding on the door is getting louder and more frantic. What will you do next?
All right. Ask them what do they want. We're probably gonna die.
You shout through the door asking the figures what they want. There's no response, only more pounding and shouting from the other side. Suddenly, you hear a loud crash as the door is kicked in and the figures burst into your apartment. You try to defend yourself, but it's no use. They overpower you and knock you unconscious. Game over.
Well, damn. Okay, so I'll leave you with that. We made it quite far in that story. Oh yeah, it's interesting. I like where it's going. I do see how it's using both, AI text and also AI images. Um, I have to admit, as I was playing, I wasn't paying that much close attention to the images. They seemed fairly generic as far as that goes, but it kind of made sense to the story, I guess. Though I didn't feel like the background that you were looking at of the images fit the, I guess, the genre of what we were doing, but that's fine. I was kind of intrigued in that cyberpunk. So, anyway, that is this. If you want to see more of the other stories, let me know in the comments and I will revisit it.